Yeah, that's,
Well,
that, we never did get that picture.
We definitely had the phone.
What's that?
You pulled an early version. Presentation.
I think that's what we took the photo at date.
Yeah.
Is that what we did?
Yeah.
We
From the
never,
hotel.
we never got it
With
into
Ron and
the
Austin.
presentation.
It's okay.
Not quite there yet.
Yeah, close enough.
I think that's it, dude. We'll just open it up to questions and, we won't probably have any answers, no. Yes, is that John?
Yeah,
Hi, John.
hey, I got a question for you, and I've got a few more I'll catch up with you too. I would love to get a copy of that photo of the Delaware QAC. If that's possible, of the map, of the aerial map of the QAC in Delaware.
Well, this is a PDF, so we can get a picture
I made that
of it
original,
printed.
it's just a Google map, and I outlined it, because there were no photos from the,
Oh,
from the,
okay.
from the Delaware.
Well, if I get a copy, it'd be great.
No, I forgot about my scepter.
Yeah, I wondered what this.
Oh, you mean I put that site, yeah. Oh, they're saying I put that picture already on the DeLorean Pogs website. See, I gotta look at stuff I did 10 years ago, I can't remember back, thank you very much.
Yep.
I'll ask my question, then I'll let you explain the scepter as well.
Yes, I know. I forgot about this critical part. Okay.
So I'm thinking back to when I first saw the DeLorean, Back to the Future, it's coming off Doc Brown's van, and it was just like, what is that? You guys are working on these cars, your lives move on, this movie comes out, and what's your perspective? Because you go on working on these cars to help a man and a culture fulfill a dream. And then all of a sudden, culture throws a curveball that I don't think people saw too, where all of a sudden there's this movie that captivates the world, and this car is not just this iconic car, but it becomes probably the most famous movie car in cinematic history. So I'm kind of curious if you recall when you got a chance to see the DeLorean in that capacity on film, and if you found yourself kind of thinking about, oh my goodness, like how do they do that, or was it really not that way?
No, for me, you can answer your feelings after. I just want to say it point blank, because I'm asked this many times. What did I feel or think when I first saw the movie? I was pissed. My first reaction, I have a passion for that car. Hollywood's making a joke out of this. That was my very first reaction. And I've kept that for a while. All right. I was almost like offended by it. And then as it became popular, I turned my whole attitude around because I realized that it was a rebirth of DeLorean Motor Company. It came alive again for the next generation. And I think it is the best thing that could have ever happened, because if it didn't happen, I don't think we'd have as many people in here. You know, many of them were introduced to the car through that movie. But I'm just being very honest with you. My first reaction, hurt, because I thought Hollywood was just making a mockery out of this, use that car for some screwy Hollywood movie. You know, I know it's not right, but that's just how I felt. That's my answer. How were you on it, Chris?
I kind of felt the same way. I wasn't angry about it, but I didn't think much of it. I didn't watch a movie for a couple of years. Yeah, but I agree. I mean, I thought it was kind of a cool thing afterwards because it brought a whole another generation into the fascination with this car. So from that perspective, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, pretty neat.
Now.
Yes, sir.
You guys think, well, the movie is only a couple years movie. So the movie was only, let's say, 3 years, 2.5 years out. And the reality is that if the movie came out a little earlier and then that fanfare hit, is there a possibility of the car being produced for longer periods of time due to the, can you ever think of that? You know, if it was just a couple years earlier, maybe the fanfare would have brought it up to the point where you'd still be producing them years later.
I don't know, you know, maybe, but to me, the car stood on its own back in the day. You know, we couldn't go anywhere without a crowd around it, you know, especially in '81. We used to go out to restaurants and before you get out of the car, the restaurant would empty out. I mean, literally would empty out when there was a crowd around the car. It was unbelievable. So I always thought the car stood on its own merits, you know, without having to be a movie car. It worked out later on that it did, but not at that time.
Yeah, and like, sales fell off. We all, say that was part of the start. Yes, it was, sales did start to fall off.
Mortgages were 17%.
What's that?
Mortgages were 17%.
Exactly, and that's where I was going.
Couldn't get a loan on a car.
You couldn't get a car
It was
loan.
the worst.
It was the worst. You can, to this day, and I have done it, look at the U.S. automakers production for every year. Watch the curve. 81, 82, that was a recession. That was, to this day, the lowest volume of cars produced in America. Oh, wait, I'm going to come out with a novel sports car. It's like timing is everything, and it was the wrong time. Yeah.
I have a question. Does the name William Kennedy,
Bill Kennedy.
William Kennedy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, probably his real name.
Bill Kennedy. Yeah, I can't place him.
He must have worked at Delorean like at one of the centers in the States, like in September of '82.
Okay, that would have been right at,
Yeah, me too. Because like I try to find out what happened to 6543, because that's like I talked to James Aspie, for example, about this. It's like one of the only few cars where all the documents exist, and I have them, but like nobody knows what happened to that car. And I have some documents like if it was destroyed or something, and if there was anything like crazy that happened, because like it was at the end of the whole thing, and if something weird happened, like it fell off a truck or something, that because like sometimes like stories like that they just stay in your head, especially when it was like at the end, like September of '82, because at that point like pretty much everything was already
everything was pretty much wrapped
Yeah.
up. The QACs were shut down.
Jeff,
When did they? Because like it must have been.
wasn't he a corporate attorney?
Corporate attorney?
Yeah.
That could be.
No, because it says
No.
like he was working as like a controller.
Controller.
I have one of his letters here,
How
but
could-
and
He was a DMC employee?
wow, he sent the letter out like it was from DeLorean Motor Cars of America, but like it doesn't have the address on the
Okay.
letter, so you cannot tell like where it was sent from. There's like no address on
William Bill
anything.
Kennedy.
He could have been a consultant they brought in too.
I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. I mean, the name is in my head somewhere, but I can't place him from the company. And he could be a controller, which I had no interaction ever with those guys.
Now, 'cause, like,
I was busy spending money, not much.
Now look at the document. I think he was working at the center in California.
Okay.
It was like that car was supposed to go to a dealership in California, but then it,
Okay.
disappeared pretty much.
Yeah, Bill Kennedy, a controller, would have been at the Irvine office, the headquarters, which was still open in September. That was still going. Yes, sir.
I have a car that came through California's QAC, and I wondered if a similar list occurred or exists for the cars going through that area.
No.
None at all, huh?
He was the only one that took the time to do all that.
Yeah.
And
What he
I agree with you, the car stands on its own. I bought mine the week before the movie came out.
Okay.
Totally love the car.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what we all see.
Thanks, Josh.
Josh down here, so if Josh wants to share his story now.
Oh, yeah.
The parts car.
Josh, the owner of that beautiful parts car you saw.
Well, that's my story, not a their story. I don't want to suck up their time.
No, we already showed your car.
Okay. Well, I originally met them because of Tony directly, and Tony, I don't know, did you guys talk about the POGs website? Okay, yeah. And so I just happened to look up my VIN, and I noticed that compared to every other car that I was looking at, mine had pages of stuff compared to, maybe a dozen on everybody else's. And I was like, boy, mine must have fallen off the boat or something when they brought it over. And, Tony, when I put a message on Talk about it, Tony says, hey, can you give me your number? I need to call you and talk to you, And so we ended up, gave him a call, talked for a couple hours and stuff, and told him that I would be out to Woodward Dream Cruise and stuff. And so I went to Woodward that year, met Chris, and he kind of told me the story about my car, why it was special to him and everything. And then following that, I ended up going to Grand Rapids Metro Cruise. And there, I pulled into the gas station to fuel up. And I was approached by someone that claimed that they used to work at Troy with Chris. And I said, oh, wow, that's really cool. And I said, he kind of told me a cool story about my car while it was there. And I had that photo that they had shared with me printed out in the car. And so I showed it to him, and he said, that's the back wall car. I know that car, And so I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool, man. And then he said, hey, can you show me the door area on the passenger side? And I said, well, yeah, okay, sure, no problem, And so I opened it up, and there was a string. It was really weird. And my car had been really pampered the entire first 20 years of its life. It lived in a skyscraper, in the lobby of a skyscraper. And so I know that owner would not have put that on there. And the second owner of my car was actually Jennifer Tipton, she was the first female sportscaster for ESPN. And she didn't really own the car for too long. Basically, she thought that they were fast. She saw the movie, she saw the way that the line lock on the car and the squealing the tires, so she thought it was fast. When she found out that it wasn't, she tried to dump it right away. And of course I come along and stuff. So I'm fairly certain, and I know that she didn't put that string there either. Now, the guy that I met at the gas station, you guys know how it is there at Metro Cruise. It's loud, you're hollering, trying to talk to people and stuff. I really wasn't hearing him that well and stuff, but he said, oh my God, that string is still there. He remembered putting it there when it was supposedly at the facility. And I know that I talked to, Chris a little bit afterwards about it, and he didn't think that it would have survived inspection, that someone would have cut it off. And somehow, some way, if that story is true, it did manage to survive. And because of that, because the guy seemed legit, when I had it judged at Concours in 2014, they wanted me to remove it. Otherwise I'd lose 10 points. And I said, no, I'll keep it there. Go ahead and deduct the 10 points. And the real crapper was, though, is that the rest of the thing is that I ended up getting deducted almost 80 points because of their QAC quality assurance center changes to the car. And the rule book for the Concours specifically states, if you have documentation from the factory of changes being made to your car, we will not deduct the points for this. And so, like the screws in the sill panels and all the little things that they did to it and stuff, like I said, 80 points taken off. And back then we had 3 Concours competitors that year. And so they let each of us that received an award get up and give a little speech. And I was basically telling off the judges during my speech, saying, this is a travesty, this shouldn't be allowed, they shouldn't have deducted these points and stuff. And when I was doing my little thing, Jeff and Chris, they were in the back, and they stood up and they started yelling, we were a part of the factory. And I said, yeah, how can you guys deny me the points? Because you say documentation, I got the real deal Holyfield standing up right there, the guy that can testify to doing it, and they are factory. And so, yeah, that's just the story of that car that's up there on the screen right now. So always be special to me.
We tried, Tom, Josh, we tried, you know. Yeah,
I mean, we tried.
I mean, it was factory, you know?
Definitely.
That's the way it came to the dealership.
But I wanted to ask you guys a question, because I know that you guys are big car guys yourselves. And with the DeLorean being as special in your lives as they are, have you guys ever personally desired to own one? And if not, why? Or if yes, why?
Come to my presentation tomorrow afternoon and your answer.
Okay, very good.
I'll answer that.
Okay.
I got a Pontiac, and it keeps me pretty busy. I don't have time for another car. But I will say one thing about John DeLorean, if I can. And I've heard a lot of really cool, positive things about him today. And, you know, they talk about the bad stuff, and we all have heard that. You know, we're all sick of that. Real car people don't pay much attention to that. But when I retired in the end of 2021, I decided to go to the Gilmore Car Museum in Hickory Corners, Michigan. Has anybody ever been there or heard of it? Yeah, it's the largest car museum in North America. And people from all over the world go there. So there's some pretty cool stuff there. Me personally, because I had mentioned earlier that I took a ride in a 59 Corvette when I was 4 years old. And my dad passed away in November of 1970. So I got to live through the muscle car era, through Chevrolets and Buicks. And then later on, went to work in a speed shop and, you know, drove a lot of muscle cars. And then going to work at the Gilmore, you know, I go back to 1899 and I'm learning all this history. And we've got a 1962 Catalina 421 Super Duty in there that's 178 built. And this is a postcard, so they only made 24 of those. So it's pretty cool. You know, and I love John DeLorean's history before the DeLorean. If I go to work for him again, if I can go back in time, I go back to 1956 and jump on that train, because that would be a real cool ride. But I'll tell you this, there's a lot of engineers that come in Detroit, a lot of car people, and when they talk about John DeLorean, it's very, very positive. Nobody ever badmouths the man. I mean, they just idolize him as we do, because he's a legend.
Yeah, one other comment to that is, Tony Swan and I have gone to the Woodward Dream Cruise at least a half a dozen times over the last decade or so. And I have to say, out of all the car shows and other car events that we've gone to, the Woodward Dream Cruise is probably the best event for anybody who is a John DeLorean fan, especially the actually DeLorean clubs that go there. We get the most positive feedback and the least amount of, you know, questions about where's the cocaine and all the other stuff. So there is a general affinity for John DeLorean, and almost everyone who comes up to you and starts talking to you about the car and talking about John knew somebody that worked with John.
Right, that's his home. That was his home. Yeah, he had quite an influence in the whole industry from early days, like Chris was saying. And like I said, being a GMI graduate, matter of fact, Mary Barra right now, the CEO of GM, is married to my fraternity brother, Tony Barra. And she was actually a sister's program that I put into place at my fraternity. At GMI, you know, we were pretty much got a golden parachute if you stay there. Mary's CEO, okay? I pretty much, and I knew I would have had a great career opportunity. I was out of college. They paid for it, you know, I co-opted and got a job. I was working then as a service representative for Chevrolet, covering Michigan. A good portion of 17 dealers in Michigan. I was that guy you'd go to after your car was in for the third time and you bitched it didn't get fixed. I want to talk to the guy from the factory. I was that guy you bitched at. And but I knew I had a path that was going to take me through upper management, you know, into the higher ranks of General Motors. And it meant nothing to me. John DeLorean is the only one that I've ever really respected, admired as a true engineer. I felt that way. He captivated me while I was in college, when all the years that he was performing within General Motors. I'm watching him. And without haste, I left that corporation. And all my fraternity brothers and everybody are going, Signer, you freaking nuts. You got a golden road ahead of you. How are you going on a risk leaving and going to the company? That ain't, with a pleasure and smile on my face. I mean, I would have thrown away anything, and I possibly did. I don't care. Because those 3 years, 2.5 years, whatever, working for DeLorean Motor Company, now I'm retired, and I've been working in automotive suppliers, various I've worked for FCA, Fiat Chrysler. Now that's all behind me. If you pull out my resume, it says, what was the best and the happiest most you got out of that whole 40 years, 45-year span? There, DeLorean. That I learned more. Also for the fact that you keep in mind, how many times does somebody start a car company in your lifetime? Now it was Elon Musk, I get that. Back then, there was nobody. That's not heard of. Somebody's not started. I got the opportunity to be in at the ground floor. And the cool part is I was came from bureaucratic companies that everybody had their little niche. One guy designs the handle for the turn signal, another guy designs the stalk, another, it's just so shallow. I mean, but now I'm thrown into this corporation. There are no rules. There is nobody doing anything. If you want to do it, if it has to get done, you figure it out. You go do it. You need paper. Don't go to stationery or supplies. There isn't one of those. Get it yourself. Go to the store. I mean, everything was a learning experience. In those 2.5 years, I learned more about business, automotive, a lot of my engineering, than I had in my whole career. That's how much impact it had on me. Oh, and by the way, I ended up out of that with a wife and kids. Not bad, huh?
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful ride, and I wish I could only do it all over again.
Thanks, Jeff. We have time for one more question if somebody's got it. Otherwise, we'll bombard these guys with more questions tomorrow. One more?
It's me again. I got more coming too. Post-DeLorean career, you're starting to now, again, with your resumes, you're pursuing other opportunities.
No, we burned. No, we're done.
Okay, yeah. Did working for DeLorean Motor Company come with any downsides for future career paths? Or did you ever hear anything about maybe some people who were on a path to go through General Motors and maybe tried to go back? And if they did, was that normally a successful thing, or was it not something that worked out real well? Did you get teased or picked on? Did you go through cocaine jokes, with future?
No. Yeah. No, it helped me in my career a lot. And, I hear that bullshit, but that's just idiots that say that stuff. They're not real car people. Like I just mentioned, the real car people understand it, And his history before the DeLorean itself is real impressive, and people understand that. And for me, putting DeLorean on my resume helped me a lot. And I got a lot of interviews because of that. And sometimes I go in interviews and they just want to know about the company. Like, did I get the job? No, get out of here. But it did, I ended up being a district sales manager, going back in the aftermarket for Rebestos brakes, and then Dana chassis, and then Wix filters. So I spent 38 years in the aftermarket. And I attribute that to my time at DeLorean Motor Company. So yeah, it helped me immensely in my career. not to mention it was a great time. It was a blast. That job was an absolute blast. You know, and I don't know, somebody had mentioned it, I think maybe Barry mentioned it,
I was gonna say.
40 years, we're doing it again. So, it's a great group of people that we meet here. So we love coming back.
Yeah, everybody wanted to hear a story, of course. Like Barry was saying, he was glad when it was over, because every time they go for an interview, you just hear them say blah, 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 they want to know about DeLorean, and hear your story. But Barry, I didn't mind that, because it was cool. I enjoyed talking about my experiences with DeLorean, and it did open doors for me, I'll guarantee you, because, it's not a bad place to come from.
Experienced a little bit what Chris went through. It was a novelty, so they wanted to hear about the novelty, and then that's just.
And then get out of here.
Get the hell out of
Yeah, no, I get that, yeah. I just did want to mention, and I was supposed to bring this up when I started, my scepter. Because I was always referred to as King Pog, all right? Hearts Pog, King Pog. And a nice gentleman, Matt Summers, sitting over there one year, made this by hand for me. And
Out of a tomato.
out of a tomato.
It was like,
And what?
Assembled.
Assembled it. Well,
Those are Swarovski crystals on the headline. It's always very expensive.
oh, yes, I can see.
Yeah.
They're not aligned properly. Come on, you
They
gave
were
me.
your cars.
But anyhow, I did want to share that. And I was going to come out and have this in my hand at the beginning as King Pog, but I didn't want to overlook that. That was a really kind gesture. Thank you.
very cool.
That's our hero.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Chris. Great job, as always. We look forward to asking you a few more questions tomorrow. That concludes it for the evening, folks. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. Get some rest.